The Kannyu 3 camp is a bit unique in that it gets thousands of unknowing visitors who come to see Hellfire Pass but don't know about the camp, which was located right in the field at the entrance to the museum. The various camps in the Kannyu area have been called different names by different people and at different times, and it can be confusing. But this camp is now most commonly called Kannyu 3. This camp was primarily occupied by the 400 Australians of T Battalion, originally part of D Force. They arrived here and set up camp on or around Anzac Day in 1943. The very next day they started the brutally difficult work cutting Hellfire Pass through the nearby hill. But it looks like, as with so many of the other camps, other groups of people were at this camp. Some passed through the camp briefly on the way to other camps. Others may have temporarily joined the workforce here before being moved elsewhere. Here are 3 camp sketch maps of this camp, and as usual they are quite different and contradictory and difficult to place on today's landscape. First, let's look at this one, labelled the 152-kilometre camp. The Kannyu 3 camp is shown here at a T-junction along the Japanese highway with a path going down to the railway. There was a Japanese camp next to the POW camp. The road to the south goes back to Kannyu No. 1 camp, and the road shown here is the road north towards Hintok Mountain camp. It crosses a stream and passes through another small Japanese camp, then there is a short section with no features labelled, and finally a cemetery. This is the Malay hamlet area, and we'll leave that for another video. Back to the camp, this map shows the camp on the right-hand side of the path going down to the railway. Note that the final part of the path twists and turns just before reaching the railway, and arrives at the railway at the end of a bridge. The railway labels show Tampi to the south and Hintok to the north, which are both correct, but this Tampi station label is wrong. There was no station near the 152-kilometre mark. This second map also shows the T-junction in the road. The road goes south to Kannyu No. 1 camp this way, and north to Hintok Mountain camp this way. The bend in the road is much less sharp than the other map, and this is more accurate. This map shows the camp on the left side of the road going down to the railway, and shows nothing of the railway. But it does show more detail to the south, with a stream crossing under the road at the edge of the camp, and the camp cemetery 100 yards beyond the stream. For the third map, I cannot find the original source. This copy was displayed at the Weary Dunlop Memorial Park, and attributed to British POW Jim Rae. Like the other two, it shows the camp at the T-junction with the path towards the railway and Hellfire Pass, with the Japanese engineers camp across the road. It also shows more detail of the camp layout. This map shows a Ramusha camp on the right side of the path going down to the railway, with a workshop a little farther down. On the left side, he has marked out 3 different groups: Major Lee's party, and I don't know anything about this group, a place he calls our area, which I take to be British, and the Australian D-Force camp. This map also shows the stream and even has identified D and F cookhouses beside the stream. This would suggest that perhaps the British contingent was there as part of F-Force. But I think at the very most, F-Force was only here for a brief stop on the way farther north, and never really a part of the Kannyu 3 camp. So who the other 2 groups are is a mystery to me. If anyone watching this knows more, please feel free to leave a comment and share it with us. Anyway, as with all my videos, the focus is to document where this was, and certainly not add to the confusion about who may have been here. This is what the area looked like in March 1945. You've seen this photo in an earlier video. We are looking straight down into Hellfire Pass here, and this is the Kannyu 3 camp area. You can see that the camp has already been abandoned by this time, but the Japanese camp across the road is still active. The Japanese road is here, coming up from Tampi, and passes between the POW camp and the Japanese camp, then continues north to Malay Hamlet and beyond. The T-junction with the camp road is here. Since the sketch maps were quite contradictory about the locations of the camp around the T-junction, all we can say is that we can see the remains of the camp on both sides of the path down to the railway. The stream shown in the sketch maps is not visible through the trees. We can see the path through the trees all the way down to the railway. It passes this building here, which from the sketch maps is probably the workshop, apparently still active to support ongoing railway repair works. At the end of the path, we can even see the final twists and turns down to the railway line, and the bridge nearby as we saw in the first camp sketch map. That bridge was number Q582 in the Allied numbering system. If we overlay this photo carefully on Google Maps, aligning all the nearby hilltops and the known railway trace, we can see where all these details are today. First, we need to mark everything on the photo: the Japanese road, the camp path, the railway, the bridge, and all the camp buildings. For clarity, let's also add very approximate camp perimeter lines based on where the trees have been cleared. Now, if we make the 1945 photo transparent, we can see where everything is on today's Google Earth. There is a helicopter pad in the middle of this field, which makes a useful point of reference as the Japanese road ran nearly straight through it, so it conveniently marks the boundary between the POW camp and the Japanese camp. Today, there is no trace of the stream which ran along the edge of the camp. I suspect that when Highway 323 was constructed, the stream was diverted somewhere else. The original path walked by the POWs is surprisingly close to the current stairs from the museum down to the railway, marked here in blue. Today, we first step foot on the railway trace at almost precisely the same spot as the POWs did over 80 years ago. This is what the stairs and the bridge look like today. Let's have a look around the camp area and see how it looks today. In this clip, we're on the road leaving the museum, just past the entrance to the second car park. We are standing on what was the path leaving the south end of the camp and going down to the railway. The mini-map on the left shows where we are standing on today's Google Maps, and on the right is the same area as it was back in 1945. The little red markers show exactly where we are standing and the direction we are facing. We are standing in the southwest corner of the camp, just south of what was probably the workshop. A bit farther up the road, now we are closer to the center of the camp. In the 1945 view, all the camp buildings in this area were dismantled, and this was an open field. Now we are looking north up the road towards Malay Hamlet Camp, while standing exactly at the T-junction of the camp path and the Japanese road. Most of the Japanese camp buildings are between here and the current highway. The giant tree just behind us looks like one of the so-called witness trees, but you can see in the 1945 view that this junction was a wide open field and this tree grew after the war. Standing on the road just before the exit from the Hellfire Pass Museum, we are standing amongst the buildings of the Japanese camp, right beside the four main long barracks buildings. Standing on the helicopter pad, we are standing on the old Japanese road between the Kannyu 3 camp to the left and the Japanese camp to the right. Here we are looking at the entrance to Hellfire Pass, which was on the south side of the Japanese camp. A few of the Japanese buildings were on the other side of Highway 323. And in this last clip, we are standing on the side of the highway at the north side of the Japanese camp, at the location between two large camp buildings. So that's the end of this look at the Kannyu 3 POW camp. I hope you found it interesting or useful. See you in the next video.